Alright, this is my video on why I personally believe that Connecticut is being destroyed by design. And it gets a little into that conspiracy thing, but it seems to make sense. Now, Connecticut has an interesting, rich history. Connecticut, it was referred to as the Provisions Colony or Provision State by General George Washington because so many of his supplies were built here or stored here in Connecticut. Connecticut has always been a very industrialist colony, and Connecticut was also known as the Constitution State. Unfortunately, it seems like the constituents of Connecticut seem to forget that. That goes all the way back to 1638 with the Fundamental Orders, where we established essentially a government for the people and by the people to an extent. Now, Connecticut, like all basic states in the Union, lost a good bit of its industry over time. And I want to make a point here first, before I go any deeper. Think about, the whole aspect of industrialization. The Industrial Revolution brought prosperity and developed the middle class. So if the Industrial Revolution and industry in general means prosperity, what is a post-industrial society? Now getting into some other issues, Connecticut's taxes have gone up through the roof. Things we said we would never tax morally, like the level at which we're taxing clothes and food would never happen, is currently happening. Connecticut has increased taxes on every level except one, and I'll get to that soon. Connecticut has an interesting new liquor tax program. If you own a bar or a general liquor store, package store, whatever you like to call them, you have to go through all your inventory. And for the past year, all the alcohol you sold, go through all your old receipts, you have to pay a tax on it, increased tax, you have to pay a tax on your new inventory. And you also have to contact the bottlers and see if they produce over 50,000 bottles of alcohol. If they do, you have to pay a new tax bracket. And the thing is that the state of Connecticut has a grand master list that goes through how much bottles were produced by each bottler roughly. And if you screw up and forget to contact someone or put the wrong information down, besides paying a fine, you can also get your liquor license removed. So once again, it's essentially destroying a lot of small businesses out there. In fact, all small businesses right now in Connecticut have to pay an increased inventory tax. If you don't even have a brick and mortar store, you're just online, you have to pay an increased sales tax. It makes it very hard for a person to start a business. Connecticut has some other increased taxes. Recently, they tried a bottle program, where you return the old water bottles, get 5 cents back. I thought it was for recycling, but Connecticut, a while back, had a paper article saying that they're very upset with the bottling program because so many people are returning the bottles. They're actually recycling them. They thought they would just pay the 5-cent fee and then forget about it, and they would be able to basically make more profit, but that's not the case. Connecticut has increased its income tax, and one of the interesting things is Connecticut's only about 8 states in the Union that actually has an income tax. And those 8 states that have an income tax have the lowest productivity levels of any state in the Union. And that's because they can make more money elsewhere. Why should they stay here? So the interesting thing is that the Connecticut income tax was originally established as a temporary measure. I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary measure in government. Connecticut removed a lot of its toll booths, the whole toll roads and whatnot. They said they weren't safe, so they got rid of them and established an income tax for a while. And it stayed, and now it's increased. And the funny thing is, they actually brought back some toll roads now in Connecticut. So now they're having it both ways. It seems like Connecticut really needs to learn that it's not so much a revenue problem as perhaps a spending problem. But this is my hypothesis. Connecticut is being transformed into what its kind of sad image is to many people. People think of Connecticut as a Westport. People think of Connecticut as a Greenwich, which it's not. We aren't all wealthy. And I think that the powers that be want to turn Connecticut into a wealthy vacation land for wealthy out-of-staters. Similar things have happened around the Gulf area in the United States. They've tried taking land, kick the people who lived there out for many years and try to establish some sort of a fancy upper-class village. The funny thing is, the one tax that wasn't increased in Connecticut was the property tax. Now, people say, oh, it was the Republicans who, lowered it, but you know what? If you live in New York and own a vacation home in Connecticut, you just got a tax deduction. Isn't that great? There's some other interesting things going on with Connecticut, particularly Malloy. A lot of people hate Malloy. I didn't vote for him because he said he was going to raise taxes anyway, but he's gone a little overboard. Connecticut right now has surpassed Michigan in the levels of unemployment. Michigan is the home of Detroit, and we have surpassed them. But Connecticut, you got to ask yourself, where are they spending the money? Where is it going to? Connecticut, across the board, did huge spending cuts on all education programs. The community college budget's gone, basically. The university program's been slashed. So now if you're a middle or lower class person trying to better yourself, get a real job, you can't. All right, you aren't competitive in the workforce because you probably can't get the degree. There's no more financial aid. And let's say if you could afford it, the program's budgets have been slashed, so now there's less teachers, less classes, and the whole competitive aspects of the course and the world has now been lowered. You can't learn as much. All right. But one college is always immune from all this. One college is always free from any budget cuts, and that's UConn. UConn is a state school. UConn is also a party and sports school. And the funny thing is they can afford $200 million plus salaries for fancy coaches, but they can't really afford a good education program for the other colleges. I mean, UConn, believe it or not, has a program where you can be a 5-year student. You can take a 4-year degree program, spend an extra year at college, and everything's paid for by the taxpayer's dime. Your room and board, your clothing, your food, everything. Well, not so much about the clothing, but your uniforms at least. But the idea is that you can spend an extra year at college because you're a good sports player. Now, here's the thing. Once again, what are they spending money in? Well, this is the problem. When you invest in sports, a lot of bad things happen. Sports can be very tribal. Sports can also be, very violent. All right. Now, I'm not saying that sports are bad, but, the idea is that so many young people get so sidetracked with sports. They know every stat of every game. They know every player, but they don't know their financial history, and they don't know their politicians. So they're basically being controlled. And then when it's too late, it's like, oh no, I know something's going on. They've gotten so brainwashed in sports that they can't snap out of that tribalism and they can't become a mature adult. All right, and this isn't just males, this is females as well. And it gets into another aspect, which is what are we spending money on again? Well, cigarettes. All right, I'm not talking about, we're subsidizing cigarettes. We're not. We're taxing cigarettes. If you basically intend to close the budget gap by taxing cigarettes and then spend money in anti-smoking programs, it's not really a good investment. And for a long time, I like to believe that people are really worried about the morality and the health of others by telling them to stop smoking. But we don't really spend as much, so let's say liquor programs or like domestic violence programs, stuff along those lines. But we always spend a lot of money on cigarettes. And I wondered why. And this gets into the conspiracy thing, but I think from a young age, we almost want to teach kids to be afraid. Every time they see the cigarette, they have this shock, this fear emotion. And it's almost like we want to embed that into them, this emotion, before they even really need to learn it. Just this constant fear of something, so that later on we can play upon it. I don't know. But it's strange because Malloy kind of committed a felony by assisting illegal immigrants. If you're an illegal immigrant, from what I hear, or at least the child of an illegal immigrant, perhaps therefore you can be an American citizen, but anyway, if you don't have your true legal status, you can now get discounted in-state tuition and become eligible for certain financial aid programs. So the American citizens who, let's say, at least hope to learn a little bit about the Constitution and what makes us America and pay some taxes, they don't get the benefits, but the people who are illegal do. All right, once again, it seems like they're almost trying to destroy the state. This is my hypothesis again. They're going to try to turn it into a wealthy vacation village. All the wealthy people, they're going to encourage them to come to the state. Those who we can't make poor enough through taxes and lack of employment leave, that is, leave the state, we're going to stack and pack them in Section 8 ghettos. I think that's really what the idea is. You're going to make them so poor that they become dependent on the government. Just the other day, I saw an ad with Dan Malloy on the television saying that if your small business can't make payments and you need an emergency loan, call us up and we'll find a loan program for you. Great, now you can sell your business out to the government. Now they can own you. I mean, it's just unbelievable. There's probably, once again, some things I missed in my little hypothesis here of why Connecticut's being destroyed by design. But that's basically the gist of it. I really think that, there's an agenda going on out there to really change the landscape of Connecticut, and not for the better of the majority of the citizens. That's basically all I have to say.